Well, welcome to the Experts Podcast. Nick Hayes with you. Great to have your company. And we have a very special expert that we're going to have a chat to today. A story that you probably don't hear a lot of, a story that is hidden away out in the regions of Australia, a story that doesn't get told nearly enough. And I'm talking about our First Nations people. I'm talking about their health and well-being. Sure, we see a little bit of it in the news. It pops up now and then. Not a lot of positive stories, a lot of negative news that does float around. But there's an organisation that is doing great things. EON Foundation. Now, I did not know what EON Foundation did until I got to know the CEO and the founder. By the way, we'll go into that, the founder. I know her from many, many years back. But the EON Foundation is doing amazing things with Aboriginal communities, getting Aboriginal communities to identify the real issues that are going on in their own health and well-being, looking at food, looking at getting back to the very basics of looking after their health, because when you've got a health, you've got everything. We welcome Kathryn Taylor, CEO of the EON Foundation. Welcome, Kathryn.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure to join you today.
CEO of the EON Foundation. For our listeners, for our viewers, what is it? What drives the EON Foundation? What's the goal?
To prevent preventable diseases in remote Aboriginal communities. So, as you mentioned in your introduction, Nick, we've worked in remote Aboriginal communities for over 20 years. It's a co-design partnership with each remote community. So they approach us because they want to take their health into their own hands. And it looks like a 5-year program. So it's really consistent and like a concentration of resource with local employees working with the community to embed gardens, edible gardens, with nutrition training and education, primarily through the school students, and then branching out into the community depending on what that place wants or needs.
It's an amazing initiative, an amazing program, because one of the things that we love the most, and I think prevention is better than cure. We've heard that a lot. We've heard it being said a lot, and it does get dilly-dallied around quite a bit in all circles. But this is really the essence of prevention is better than the cure.
Absolutely. And only 2% of the federal health budget is spent on prevention. And it's such a no-brainer. And so many nutrition-related diseases are, diabetes type 2, eye health, ear health. It has all these ripple effects. So if you can get nutrition right early intervention, and get kids learning how to cook, grow, eat healthy food from a really early age, it stops so many other issues further down the line. But it's a tougher sell. It's a more nuanced sell, I think, to the general public than presenting a sick child, for example. It's harder to get that cut through in telling that story. It's quite a complicated, nuanced story in the regions that we're working.
Is it, Kathryn, because they're so far away, that they are in very remote communities that, even to see a camera or any form of media would be completely and utterly foreign to them? Is that the reason, or is it also because it's our First Nations people, it's our Aboriginal people that are at risk here, that you're looking to help and serve? Is it one or two, or is it both?
I think it's absolutely both. And when we're speaking remote, I don't think, unless you've been there and travelled to remote communities, the concept of remote is kind of so abstract to so many of us living in cities.
Well, Kathryn, people in Perth think Canning Vale's remote. They've really got no idea, do they?
No. And just, this week we've had, the last term really of school, we have had so many communities that have been completely inaccessible through Sometimes it's just seasonal. It is the wet season. So a lot of communities get routinely cut off from anywhere for the wet season. But of course, the Northern Territory, we've experienced more flooding than what is usual. And we've had some communities evacuated, but some communities that we just re-entered this week, Yarralin, for example, in the Northern Territory, they've been cut off since December. So some of them have emergency food drops with helicopters or planes if they can land on their local airstrip.
Sure.
But like, we can't even imagine what it's like to live in a community that's cut off with limited supplies in their local store. You know, a truck might get through once a month, if that. Yeah, it's kind of, it's proper remote.
So Kathryn, when we're dealing with a war in Iran, thinking, we're running out of petrol or diesel, we've only been experiencing this for maybe 3-4 weeks, a community being cut off since December. We're talking April now. That's a long time to be cut off. This is happening far more regularly than I dare say that it's more the norm, I would say, than it is irregular.
Yeah, I would agree. But it's we have to cross creeks and riverbeds to get there, and so even in the dry season, some of our communities have a 4-hour, 5-hour drive to the local bigger supermarket.
Yeah, that's crazy. 4 or 5 hour
You
drive.
imagine that by the time trucks have got there with fresh fruit and vegetables, they might have been sitting on a truck for a couple of weeks, and the cost is prohibitive. And we're regularly hearing about $18 cauliflowers or broccolis or the food not getting there at all.
All of a sudden, us metro people are starting to feel a little bit better about the prices we pay at the local supermarket. So I'm taking it's both probably because of the isolation and the fact that out of sight, out of mind might be one of the reasons that this is sort of not raised as an issue. And the other, and I really do want to drill down with this, is it because it is Aboriginal, is the fact that they're not necessarily represented appropriately politically, that they don't necessarily have the focus on the health, because we do hear a lot of stories that a lot of funding goes into the health and well-being of First Nations people, but does it actually reach to them? Does it get to them?
I don't think so, Nick. I think there's a lot of misinformation, of course, and there's I've noticed since the failed referendum that there's almost been an apathy in talking about Indigenous affairs. That's just my own personal observation, but it seems like there's a lack of appetite to really tackle some of these issues. And I think people hear about closing the gap and closing the gap statistics, but I think there's a complete lack of understanding in what that actually means. And that means our First Nation people have such a shorter life expectancy and a poorer quality of life than non-Indigenous Australians. And I just find that even if you don't believe in the humanity or the humility kind of argument in that inequity, at least believe in the economic argument of what that costs us as a nation. That inequality is huge.
Yes.
And the cost of disease and the disease burden is huge. So if we can invest upstream, it makes such economic sense at a bare minimum. But we don't really. I think you're right. I think it's because I don't know whether people are tired of hearing about it, or there's that misperception that a lot of money goes into First Nations communities, but it really doesn't. And when you're on the ground, you can see that it's not reaching the people that need it the most.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, because the reality here is that we are not seeing improvements, or we haven't seen the kind of improvements that you would think with the funding that was available. So it's obviously money going in, but it's not going to the right places. But I feel the EON Foundation, and this is something around the referendum time that was going to give a voice to First Nations people in the Constitution. It was also around the same time that your organisation was at threat there too, with funding around supporting the very thing that actually serves Aboriginal First Nations people, having a real result, because you are having great results getting health initiatives into communities that possibly weren't prepared or weren't going down that pathway. Talk us a little bit about the way funding works for you. I assume your federal government funded. Are you getting any support from the state governments?
No, Nick. And it's shaky federally too. So I know we're not alone in feeling the kind of squeeze on the sector for federal government funding. But initially, we were funded by the Department of Health for many years, the Commonwealth Department of Health. And actually, it was Media Stable that really helped us through that time transitioning to NIA funding, which is National Indigenous Australians Agency funding, so still Commonwealth, by securing coverage in the Australian and just bringing it to the forefront. And it really helped with some of our advocacy kind of positions. But we don't have long-term secure federal funding. But at the moment, we're about 53% comes from private philanthropic, so high net worth individuals and private foundations, and the rest comes from the Commonwealth. Despite being in Western Australia for 20 years, we'll be in our 21st year this year, and being in many West Australian schools, government schools and communities, we get very, very little from the WA government. In my time as CEO, we haven't had anything from the WA government.
But Kathryn, are they talking to you? I mean, you can see the results that you are getting. Without doubt, I've seen you mentioned the Australian piece with Natasha Robinson, journalist, who, when you get Natasha Robinson's attention, pretty much gets Australia's attention. But I would imagine, because of the good work that you're doing and the turnaround and the health statistics that you're turning around from the negative to positive, surely even the health department of Western Australia must be going, hey, thanks for helping us. Let's keep this going.
No, they absolutely should be, but they're not. No, I think, since the Cook government was elected, we've had over 20 points of communication with the WA government in seeking meetings with Minister for Indigenous Australians, Minister for Preventative Health, the Premier himself, and it's really hard work to get any meaningful kind of partnership discussion or collaboration or where we have alignment. And you're absolutely right. We have really great statistics, and we've worked very hard with an Indigenous-led research company to get that impact data. And we've shown that where we are for over 5 years, you can see a reduction in type 2 diabetes. So we've absolutely got the data to support what we do and the impact of what we do. And we've got that proven history, 20 years. We've definitely learned a lot along the way. And most importantly, the support of communities. So the invitation comes from community. We're never working where we don't have that invitation and that co-design.
Sure.
So, yeah, we absolutely feel we're doing all the right things, but it is increasingly difficult to engage with WA government in a meaningful way.
Well, the good news is, Kathryn, that a lot of media in Western Australia listens to this podcast. So I think they might be taking up the fight for you a little bit there. I think a big shout out there to Ollie Peterson at the ABC and a few of my friends over at 7 and 9. We'll have a chat to them. We'll see where that's going. I love the stories that can be told, and I would love to hear from you, Kathryn, because in a storytelling and a media perspective, we need case studies, we need the people, we want to see the life, we want to see change, we want to see the human stories behind that, and I think that's something that EON Foundation has managed to do very, very well, particularly in the remote communities, because without those pictures, without those videos and those people that are prepared to say something, it can be a non-story for media. How do you go about that? Because I know that there's a lot of energy there from the EON Foundation to really provide that and put that in front of the media.
It's challenging to get footage when we're working in remotes and we're working with young children. But with Media Stable's encouragement and support, actually, we've really worked hard on that and have sent photographers in. But one of my favourites that you captured coverage of was on Channel 10, because we did a Red Dirt MasterChef. So the kids in Ely, community in the Kimberley, they decided they had an hour to harvest from their incredible garden and to cook a 3-course meal. Each class within the school was competing against the other classes. So you had tiny tots right through to high schoolers, had a panel of judges, and a competition was incredibly tough. And we managed to just record on an iPhone that unfolding over the hour, and the winning group had 13 ingredients from the garden, and they're
wonderful.
These tiny little kids with their mad knife skills, cutting up all the vegetables and cooking the most delicious 3-course meal with no recipe. It was just from repetition of those constant classes that they'd had the benefit of, and their pride and love of their garden and picking their own fruit and vegetables was extraordinary. And so obviously MasterChef is delivered by Channel 10, so they covered us on their morning show, and it was just a really beautiful moment in hearing the voices of community broadcast on national breakfast show.
Oh, gorgeous. And it is those stories that I think sometimes, and I'd love to get your view on this as a not-for-profit, as an organisation on limited funds, and telling stories. It is so powerful when it does get out there, and I think that sometimes it's the very things that are going on around us that we don't realise. Hey, we could be telling this story further and wider if we just invite the right people in, if we get the people involved and connected, and nothing would be better, especially when you've got children involved and you've got, you've got colours, you've got different views and perspectives that really just light up either a screen or can light up the airwaves. It's just powerful. Those stories must be, they must put smiles on the faces when you see those being amplified further, because it's stories we just don't get to hear.
Absolutely. And I think that pure joy is hard to translate by words. And we don't, because we're lean and efficient, we don't put any money into advertising or have any kind of big paid campaigns. We rely entirely on organic content. So those stories really have to work very hard in reaching those new audiences for us that, like we said at the very beginning, geographically completely inaccessible. So there's a lot of power in that content. I've got one video that is my absolute favorite. It's before classes even start for the day, but our project manager, our staff members, sitting down with a group of students, and they were told not to pick the watermelons, that they won't be ready yet, but they picked one anyway. So they decided they needed to open it just to check whether it was red inside. And this video, they're cutting it open, break it open, and it's red and it's juicy and it's delicious, and these hungry kids are filling their faces with this watermelon, and moment alone tells, 1,000 words couldn't convey that.
Yeah. I love it. I love that kind of storytelling. It's the smiles on faces on the kids' faces is it tells it all. Um, you're very you're very fortunate, I think, with a founder in Caroline de Mori who has a enormous background in communications and public relations. I've got to share a little secret with you, Kathryn. I remember back in my days of media intelligence, we used to provide content to Caroline's business and organisation. She scared me a little, Kathryn. She scared me a little. But a gorgeous, passionate woman about everything that she does. She's the founder. Her travels, her working out in remote Australia really did push this further. What's it like having someone like that who understands the power of communication and storytelling to tell your story?
Extraordinary. Yeah, she is a force. She's absolutely incredible.
And when I say she scared me, it wasn't in a really negative way. It was sort of very,
I think
very
she'd be flattered by
confident, powerful woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that culture is permeated through the organisation, and that's why we have been around for 20 years. It's why we managed to continue to do such impactful work across Northern Territory and Western Australia is largely because of the foundation she laid, but also the way in which she's chair of the foundation, so the way she continues to lead us today. But I think, somebody gave us $10,000 last year because they had heard Caroline speak at an event 5, 6, 7 years prior. So the way that she tells EON's story and manages to be a voice for those that may not be able to speak to media or have the opportunity is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it is. A lot of businesses, I've talked about this in previous podcasts. If you've got someone in PR or communications that understands how it works and operates, hang on to them. Because particularly in this storytelling world now, in this world of AI, in this world of things that human stories are just taking longer and are harder to tell because the technology is too much it gets too much in the way. And these are the true human stories behind it. What's been you mentioned earlier that the funding is at risk and it can be it's not rock solid like for most not-for-profits. It is always that sort of struggle street that a lot of not-for-profits go through because of the uncertainty and depending on the times that we're in. But the media itself, I dare say it is raising profile and raising awareness around who you are and what you do, because the amazing thing I see in your portfolio, not only on the ABC, you're in magazines, you're in places of TV, you're in places on radio and an opinion editorial in the paper. It must spark at least an interest there from not only potential donations, but also political strength and power that you might get in actually influencing those that have the hands on the purse strings.
Absolutely. And we see a spike in donations every time that we do have a story published in the media. But I think it can't be understated that that bigger advocacy piece. And I think what Media Stable's been quite clever at doing with me is not just we do the hard-hitting stories in, say, the Australian in the health section, as you mentioned, around type 2 diabetes and prevention and those really shocking statistics, but also in the warmer kind of more people interest media like Women's Weekly. We've had Gardening Australia Junior, and for an organisation like us that doesn't have a great deal to invest in raising our profile, those stories are just invaluable in reaching new audiences, but absolutely politically as well.
I love the fact that you do get such great media, and probably I don't want this to sound terrible, but you bat above your average only because you've got great stories to tell. And I think sometimes a lot of businesses and organizations get confused as to, oh, they won't be that interested in us. They won't be that keen to cover us because we don't have that many stories. I think if you just scrape the surface a little, you'll find the very stories that not only media is interested in, more importantly, audiences are.
Oh, absolutely. And we see so many stories at the moment around, like we were talking earlier about the cost of fruit and vegetables in supermarkets, and it's finding all those little hooks that relate to our story. Like we can talk to that. We can talk to what's going on in schools. We can talk to food security. We can talk to education, to social service. Like we've got all these really interesting kind of crossovers, and it's just finding the kind of human interest points in all of those different sectors, all of
It
those
is.
different sections of the media too.
Absolutely. And when you do find them, it works. It is the kind of thing that it just might be a bit of strategy. It might be just a little bit of preparation, bit of work to get those together. But I know that particularly when you're talking remote communities and the sort of, we'll have people that are complaining because they're on the Gold Coast that they can't get close to the media. It's like, you're not remote in the Gold Coast, I can assure you, people. When it takes you 5 hours to get to a supermarket, that's called remote.
Yeah,
It's
and
you.
I think it's patience. I think it's building. I mean, I'm constantly. We have fortnightly meetings with my media stable client manager, but so it's constantly feeding stuff, and it might not be interesting in that moment, or it might not be immediate, but it's that deep understanding of our business and the
Yep.
kind of cumulative building all this knowledge and these pieces of information over time, and then so we can react quite quickly when the opportunity arises, or there's something in the media that we are really relevant or add to that story. So it's not a short game. It's
Uh,
some of the best stories have come from, well, let's do a relevant analogy, a seed, and have grown over quite a long time, and then it's just been with Media Stable having that deep knowledge of our business and then being able to respond in the moment.
Now, I don't want everyone to be listening in or watching today to think that this is just one big ad for Media Stable. It's not
No,
just about
no,
the
it's not.
wonderful work that I know Emily Morgan does. And I'll tell you this, Kathryn, I think the only reason I get to work with Emily Morgan is for clients like you, EON Foundation, where I think we take great pleasure and pride in the fact that seeing good results for you as well. And I think that sort of goes further on to say about that connection relationship that we have. And I am now sounding like one big ad for Media Stable, so I'll stop
I
that
didn't
now.
mean to. I didn't
No,
mean to, but I do have a really excellent working relationship with Emily, and she's not afraid of telling me when something's boring or won't work either. Like I think it's
oh,
a
don't
very
worry, Kathryn. She tells me exactly that as well all the time. So you're not alone there. Let's talk about the future, because I think that we started this podcast off with reference to prevention being far better than cure. The storytelling, the work that you're doing, and the advocacy that you're doing to support that, to turn what is what is really serious health issues, and it's not just for First Nations people. We're having it right here in metropolitan all over Australia. But to to turn that education around, what are we going to need to do to support, particularly remote communities, the First Nations people, the ones that need it the most?
Mm. Well, we have a waiting list of over 40 communities who have reached out to EON, ready to start the program, and the only thing holding us back is funding. So I think the first thing is to invest in a proven program of 20 years, having impact, showing the results, and with a really strong, credible kind of governance structure. I think it is long term, and that may be boring for short government cycles and for people to hear, but it's that consistent long term behavioural change that actually has results, and that we need to invest in the practical, the no-brainer the words that you used at the beginning of this interview. It's starting with that good foundation for our children so that they have really great, healthy, thriving lives.
The scariest thing that I heard there, what you just said, is the 40 organisations that are on the wait list and that you're ready to work with them. The only thing holding back is the funding. And I love that. I love the philanthropic attitude of people, particularly when times are tough. And I think we are, even where our donations and dollars go, we do. It's a hard job, but the governments have this money, and they do and can put this in and change the way and save themselves a lot of money down in the future. I mean, that's what for me is that's crazy and it's ludicrous, is that the money not spent now is only going to be double, triple further down the track. That's going to cost them. So
I see,
why not?
The opening of more kind of dialysis machines announced or celebrated in media, and no one should ever celebrate renal failure. To get to that point further down the line is so incredibly devastating. If we can do anything to prevent that kind of stage of poor health, then we absolutely should be.
Kathryn, we should be celebrating the shutting down of these machines so that they're not necessary in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where you're heading. EON Foundation doing amazing things. If people wanted to find out more about how you work and how you operate, where's the best place to go?
eon.org.au, and it has some of those great videos and photos that you were mentioning, Nick, that really tell our story, and a map showing all our locations so you can see just how remote we actually are.
I jumped on that map. I had a look at that map. Wow. I mean, your workplace is literally 2/3 of Australia.
Absolutely. And I have the privilege of being able to visit those places, and it really is extraordinary country and extraordinary people that we have the privilege of working with.
You've done a lot of media over your time. What's been the most successful? What is the piece of media? I'm going to assume it's the Australian Natasha Robinson's piece that looked there at the diabetes and diabetes in the community. But what's been your favourite piece of media? You mentioned the the teacher before with the watermelon, but what's and that's a video, I suppose. But what's been the media that you've enjoyed doing the most?
I think Gardening Australia Junior. I think
I love that.
Having those 2 episodes filmed in Jiltmengen in the Northern Territory in the Big Rivers region, and having Clarence, the host, spend 2 days with those students and him learning on country with them and harvesting from their garden, pickling, preserving and making food was just so incredibly special.
I love that. I love that. And I think it's such a great message for anyone that is in a remote community or is a little bit further out, that media will go there. Media will make the effort. You've just got to present the opportunity and present it and package it up so that they'll get it and understand it straight away. Because it is a little bit of quite a bit of an investment there from the media as well, in time and resources.
Huge. And for the Sydney producers to get their head around that they were flying to Darwin and then driving 3 hours to Kathryn and then staying there and then heading on dirt roads another few hours was just It was
Here I
so
complain about my
different. Yeah.
10-minute commute to Adelaide. It's just insane, isn't it? We have
Yeah.
absolutely no concept or idea. Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, Kathryn, thank you for joining us on the Experts Podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed finding out more about the EON Foundation. I think it is, and keep the work, keep it going. It really, I say this most honestly, is that it's the kind of organisations, we work with a lot of businesses and brands that are out there, but it's very, very few times that you can actually sort of put your head on the pillow, go to sleep, and know that you're working for an organisation that is doing such good. I mean, really changing behaviours for the good and well-being of human beings that need it more so than others. And I really keep up the good work. It's you keep doing the work. We'll keep help telling your story.
What a partnership. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Kathryn Taylor, CEO of the EON Foundation. And to Caroline de Mori, I know you'll be listening to this a little later. I'm not that scared of you. No, not at all. But I'm very proud and to be working with you and to keep telling your story. And we look forward to hearing more stories and listening to more experts in media when we talk to one of them next week. And we look forward to having your company then. We'll see you then.